feedback out of the teams I was working with. And then one day, we got a call from another project that wanted our help, but they didn't really have a budget to bring us in. So they asked if we could just kind of look at their designs, do a review of them, give them some feedback. So we did. We scheduled a meeting. They couldn't be there, so it was just our team. We threw their designs up on the screen, and one of the team members' immediate comment is, "What the fuck is that? Why the hell did they do this? Why is that on the left? Who the hell thought making a drop down was a good idea?" And this went on for about an hour, and the rest of the team, including myself, joined in these types of comments. At the end of the session, the one of us who was supposed to take all these notes and give them back to the project came up to me, and she goes, "Adam, I don't know what to do. I have nothing here. I have nothing here that I can give them. I have nothing here that's useful." At that point, I realized that our clients aren't the only ones who suck at critique. We suck too. And that's why we're here today.
So, what is critique? Because I'm pretty sure if you're listening to Adam the way I am, you're like, that's kind of what a lot of my design reviews are like. Is you put something on the wall and then it's a full-scale attack on this thing and the person who made it. So if that's not critique, then what is critique? You know, that's more, a lot of times what happens is we take the word feedback and we take the word critique and we start to mingle them together into this same thing. And that's actually not necessarily true in that critique is more of an active, living process that happens over time. It's this constant refining. And feedback is more of a, oh God, what's that? It's like gut response when you see something for the first time. And I mean, there is a role for feedback in critique, but the dynamic of a gut response as opposed to a constant refining to make a better product, there's a lot of difference there. And even more so, critique is delivered in a way, not so much that I can just put information or my opinions out there, but it's information that a designer can understand. So we're using a shared knowledge, a shared language discussing this, and it's actionable. I can do something with it. A designer can do something with it from that.
So critique is really all about critical thinking. And it's not so much that critique is critical thinking. If critical thinking is problem solving, what we're doing in critique is we're trying to understand what problems the designer was trying to solve and how they decided to try to solve them. So it's really important that we talk about this kind of stuff because, like I said earlier in my story, it's something that we use as a word in terms of what we do. You know, something we put in statements of work, something we talk about in our process. We talk about it a lot, but we don't really do it all that well. And in general, you know, a good critique is going to create opportunities and build team collaboration, build trust, and make you a better communicator.
So, I mean, this kind of goes without saying, critique, someone's usually given, someone's usually receiving, we're pitching and catching, we got it. But at the base of that is intent. And in any way, if intent isn't correct, critique falls apart. It may still happen, and you may be able to salvage something from it, but the ultimate value that critique done correctly can bring is sacrifice. Because at the root of this intent is like, why? So why am I asking for this feedback? Why am I suddenly saying, oh, I need to tell you something about this? There's usually a motivation in it, and we'll discuss a bit more about that. But it's really important to figure this out before critique starts.
So giving critique with the wrong intent is a selfish act. So it's focused on personal goals. It's focused on the person who's giving the feedback, what they're trying to get out of it. You know, most often, it's because that person is sitting there and they're having an idea and they want everybody else to know they're having that idea and they want to feel really important about it and they want everybody else to see how smart they are. So, I think, and you're not going to get anything good out of that.
Yeah, and actually, another thing too is, think about this, think about our designs. We can say that we're detached from them, but how much do we pour into our work? And then not only that, so we bring it to the table, there's a level of insecurity that comes with that. And then on top of that, we've got different stakeholders from different departments who are coming into an area, they understand it. I mean, that's why they work with us, is they understand but they don't know how to speak our language. They don't know the right terminology sometimes. So there's insecurity, so they feel like there's an element where I have to control some part of this for me, so I feel like I did contribute, and then it becomes at the expense of the team, at the expense of the product. It starts to fail. An example of this, a couple examples of selfish critique, just in case we're not getting the point here, is like the Twitters, right? Oh my gosh, new Twitter launch, that's horrible. And we see, I see some of the smartest people in our industry doing this. I do it. And we all do it because we get to an event. Oh my gosh, the faucet in the hotel's in the back of the wall. There's not, they start freaking out like it's like some revolution. And in reality, there is value. Like, it's okay to voice your opinion, right? It's okay to be like, it's so frustrating. But then again, it's like, what am I really doing there? Like, what am I getting at? So I would definitely say that open-ended, one-sided, 140-character critiques usually never very helpful, as well as critique that's like unwanted, right? Like, you don't always want my critique. You may just want to, I launched this, I'm so excited, look. Or, I want traction, I really want people to see what I'm doing here. So you're trying to get it out there. So, untimely, unwanted feedback, or critique is not always the right.
So, giving critique with the right intent, if that was all the wrong intent, what's the right intent? It's a selfless act. It's about improving the product. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about any of our particular objectives. It's about the product. You know, as long as that's our focus, we're going to have some good ground. And it's also part of facilitating a good conversation. The best critiques are always going to be a dialogue. It's a two-way street. You need to be able to ask questions. They need to be able to ask questions of you. You have to have that exchange. So, some tips for giving a good critique. First, use a filter. You know, don't have that gut reaction. Well, you're going to have it, but don't let it go. Hold on to it for a little while. Think it through. Why did you react that way? What was it that caused you to think that because the button was blue, you should vomit? You know, make sure that you're asking the right questions and bringing those reactions up in the right context. Don't assume anything, all right? Just because you're looking at the design doesn't mean you know everything that went into the design. You don't know all the constraints the designer was dealing with. You don't know what their thought process was. So ask. Ask about it, all right? Let them fill you in. And don't invite yourself. As we said, unwanted critique sucks. So make sure if you really feel like you have very important feedback and you need to tell this person, don't just start giving it to them. Ask them if you can first. Lead with questions. So similar to not assuming, you know, as the critique starts going, just start by asking questions. As Aaron said, you know, we get defensive when our work goes out. And so by asking questions, you're going to do two things. You're going to get more information on what went into the design, but you're also going to show an interest in their process. And you're going to help bring that defensiveness down just a little bit.
So just as there's positive and negative to giving, there's also positive and negative surrounding receiving critique. And with receiving critique, it takes like an immense amount of humility, because you have to go and know that you're going to lay things out there, and the whole thing and the idea is to analyze this under the microscope and figure out how to make it better and continue to build something great. So you're putting yourself at like the mercy of whoever's in the room. So it can be very a very humbling experience. But at the same time, it can go the other way. Because there's sometimes where I'm like, oh yeah, hey, why don't you take a look at this? I got this new social media app. It's like Twitter, Flickr, Path, and I want you to check it out. It's great. So look, here it is, and give me some feedback on that. And what I'm really saying is like, hi, I need a hug. Could you please just validate me really bad? And give me a good game, something, because I'm hurting. And that's okay. We all want our work to be seen. We all want it to be appreciated for the efforts that we're putting forth in design. But at the same time, we have to be careful not to be doing things. Because again, the root of critique is that intent. And if it's wrong at any one of these angles, it really limits the ability for critique to be successful. And oh, one more thing on that as well. Asking for critique without listening, or asking like, hey, you want to take a look at this? Give me your thoughts. And then they start giving thoughts. Oh, that's really good. And you're like, here, what am I doing next? And like, oh, thank you for your feedback, and I'm going to take that. And you just don't really want to listen, but you're just kind of doing it because you feel like you have to. Intent has to be there. Motivation, motive is crucial. So some tips for receiving critique. Remember the purpose. And this is really important for us as designers. It's about improvement, not judgment. This isn't, like, if my design fails, I'm not a bad person. I'm a bad person for many other reasons than why my design didn't make it. But it's really not about that with us. You know, it's really about improving the product. One of the best things you can do when it comes to design critique is removing yourself. Critique isn't, there's people that participate, but it's about the product. It's about refining this product. And so I have to remove myself from that. You know, listening. So far, listening, removing, this stuff's hard to do, or else we wouldn't have to be talking about it right now and reminding ourselves that it's super important to listen. And when people are giving you that information, there's like a data collection process. Is really kind of what critique is. I'm gathering all these insights and all this intel to refine my product. Do I really understand? It's okay to stop and say, wait, I see what you're saying, but I'm not sure. You know, maybe unpack this a little more. Because it's really, you're going to take that information and now you have to go act. You know, you have to go back and figure out what to act on, what to do, and you need to know and understand that. Think before you talk back. I think this is the 4th time we've had the bullet in the slide. You're probably going to see about 86 more, because I don't do this. It goes from here and out my mouth every time. And I have seriously zero filter. And what happens is, a lot of times, you don't need to, actually sometimes you don't need to talk back other than to say thank you. Because it's about receiving the information. And you'll see that we're not about solving anything, I'm about understanding what's going on, how we're going to progress this product by grabbing these little bits of data. So it's more about the listening, it's more about the receiving, and not so much about like, oh, thanks for that, because you know, I was trying to do this. We don't need to defend ourselves. We're really good at what we do. All of us are. So we don't need to defend ourselves. We just need to receive the critique and store it for later. And then refer to the goals. Your user stories, your personas, your goals, any data you have that's surrounding where this product should go and why is your best friend, because everything is measured by that. So now, information comes, I move it out of the way. Information, goals, product. Information, goals, product. I'm out of this. I'm just facilitating the flow of information. And goals are the greatest constraints because they keep everything moving forward with critique in the right context. It's like, how does that relate to goals? Great. How does that relate to goals? Great. Products. And it's a continual process. So, oh, one more. Participate. Oh, this is the best one, darn it. So, one thing you'll learn, we were talking about insecurities and people being defensive. One of the best things you can do is destroy the concept or the idea of us versus them, like designers versus developers, or designers versus marketing, or all this junk that we've put out there for some reason and built. By just, when it comes in, you get ready for the session, and you step over to the side, and you join everybody in critiquing the product. I'm not defending the product, I'm critiquing with them. And what that starts to do, it's very disarming. It starts to break down barriers and walls surrounding the conversation that's about to happen. People are feeling more comfortable opening up because they're like, oh, that person's critiquing with me. So I'm not like saying anything against them, we're all working on this together. And so it's one of the most important things is just to participate like anyone else and be a part of the process.
So something that we hope you've observed in the things we've talked about so far is that we're all here at a design conference and we're talking about discussing design, but all of these things happen outside the world of design too, right? And that's because critique is a life skill. It's not a design skill, okay? We all, at some point, every day, make something, do something, something we can improve upon later. And if we can start to learn to critique better, we will always have that as a tool in terms of doing things better.
So we've been kind of talking about this in a kind of a loose fashion, kind of like all around conversation. We mentioned like social ways of giving critique and kind of talking about some of the how critique, the major components. But I really want to start looking at the formal side of critique. And a lot of times we kind of get scared about formality, we get scared of meetings, but when you have structure and formal critique, you redeem the meeting, you redeem the conversation surrounding critique. It's a way for people maybe who aren't used to critiquing, you set up structure in a formal setting, and it allows them to kind of get eased into that process and get better at that conversation. And also, if you're just starting out, in your career, you're just starting to be in a position where your work's going to be critiqued, where you have junior designers on your team, then what you can do is provide a safe environment for them to put their work out there and not feel like they're getting overwhelmed
And, you know, talking about formal aspects, I think a lot of us probably have these design review meetings, right? Okay? And so what's supposed to happen in a design review, right? You go in, you bring in your work, you put it up, and you're like, please let them say yes so I can just move on to the next thing. Or, I hope the list of changes they want me to make is really, really small because I'm sick of this. Okay? That's not critique. Critique is all about improvement, all right? You should have no expectation of approval at the end of critique. That's not what you're there for. You're there to learn about how you can improve your product.
So a few things to keep in mind. Critique's a skill. It's just like anything. I think Jared stressed this in his keynote from last year's IS Summit about being in the practice of doing things. And the more you do them, the better you're going to get at them. And Todd and Matt's session about their product was so amazing because it was kind of like a list of failures. But it was so helpful because we learn by doing things. So you're going to fail at critique. You're going to fail at communication. You're going to fail at design. That's just part of how we do things. We have to learn, and the best way to learn is by doing that. So continue to practice. Start small. This is huge. If you're kind of like, I'm going to talk to these people, they're going to look at my work, grab someone. You know, for a while when I worked over at IGN, I had a design director, and every day at the end of the day, me and him just sat down with a beer, which always helps, and we just talked about our work that day. What did you work on? What were you thinking of doing this? Like, what were your ideas? Where were you taking this? It was like 30 minutes. And we just started having dialogue. Like Adam said, great critique is always a dialogue. And so we just started getting used to talking and dialoguing about the product and about the design. And it really helped us sharpen our skills. And it made us better communicators with each other and the rest of our stakeholders. And then, wait, think before you speak. I'm sensing a theme. But again, it speaks for itself. We really just have to be really deliberate in how we're communicating your critique. And then choose who you critique with carefully. Because some people just aren't into it. I mean, if you're doing client work, your client may not want a critique. They may have asked you to build X, Y, and Z, and as long as you show up with X, Y, and Z, you get your check and you're on. They're not interested in that. Some people within the company, different stakeholders, may be hard to work with. They may not be good communicators. They may disrupt the process. And sometimes those people are our bosses. And sometimes those people are our peers. And so we have to be careful in choosing and finding ways. Sometimes, you know, switch it up, do a little different, but just think carefully about who in the critique session is going to help get you the most information to improve the product.
So you want to run a critique session. Well, there are some rules that everybody needs to follow. First, everyone there is a critic, a person whose work's getting looked at, and everybody else in the room should be participating. Everyone is equal. This is really hard for organizations with a lot of hierarchy in them. You know, you make it to a certain level and there's this idea that what you say matters more than what anybody else says. That can't happen in critique. Everybody's feedback is on an equal level. There should be no expectation of a specific change coming out of a critique. Why? Because the designer at that point has a ton of information that they're going to go back and figure out what to do with, right? Well, I know that most people were saying that for our persona Susie, the flow working this way is going to make her feel like shit, and so therefore I need to change it. How they change it, that's totally up to them. Biggest thing that you can do to fuck up a critique is to start problem solving. All right? How many times have you asked somebody what they thought was wrong with something, and instead of them telling you that, they tell you the way they think it should be? All right? It happens all the time. As soon as you get into problem-solving mode, you've gotten away from analysis mode. Okay? You're not looking at the design anymore. You're trying to picture this other thing that doesn't exist, that maybe, at best, is a sketch on a whiteboard that you threw together in the 3 seconds that you just had the idea. And now everybody's focused on that, and all the hypotheses and ideas that might come along with that. And yes, that's great stuff to do, but that's not what you do in a critique.
So, rules for critique. What do you invite? I think in an earlier slide, start small. I mean, 3 to 6 people. You have to get through the session. So the more people you get, the more opinions you get, the more information you're going to get. Make it manageable. A few people. One thing that I've learned very valuable right now at HP, I'm working on a help interaction, like an admin tool for customer support agents. So the first people I want to talk to when I'm starting to show what I'm building is them. Like, I definitely show my boss and other designers critique, but I want to see the people who are going to end up using this, or the customer service manager. Kind of think about who the product and the design is going to be affecting, and get their input, get their feedback, get their insights into what you're building. Along with that, consider personality, not just roles. Some people, their roles, they will have to be there. But also think about people you know who are really good at communicating, or just have that way with people and they're easy to work with. Try to invite them. One thing that I found is helpful is don't use the same people every time. Switch it up, especially when you find the personality part. And the personalities sometimes don't work. Kind of leave them off that email next time. And, hey, we're going to mix it up and use different people. But you get a lot of different insights and a lot of different information surrounding your designs. So some of these people could be, you know, executives, product managers, you know, like I said, people surrounding the products you're building, other designers, developers. If your developers are not in your design conversations from day one, you are a bad person. And I've learned this by making that mistake numerous times. And developers are excellent thinkers. And a lot of them are very pragmatic, and it's really helpful to have them. And they help guide that conversation and understanding about what's being built. So cue them in as well. So when should you have critique? Answer, Anthony?
Early on.
And what should you critique?
Yeah. All right. So a little more practical. When you're starting off in a project, you know, you're going to be working on your high-level user and business goals. You are going to be doing your research, your competitive analysis, and maybe you're starting to put together initial concepts and a vision, right? So the goals of your critique at that point are going to be around getting feedback on those concepts. And maybe you want to critique a competing product and measure that against your goals and see where are they strong, where are they weak. So you might look at those competing products. You're going to be looking at conceptual models, sketches, flows, things like that. You move on, you get a little further along in the project, you're doing some detailed designs, you're figuring out your interactions, your product behaviors, you are identifying variations in flow where you need to, you're solving for constraints. So set yourself some goals and comparing the design of various components. You know, make sure that all the components are being measured against those goals, you're analyzing them against the same goals, and they're all holding up equally well. Identify potential usability issues. You know, critiques are a great way to surface initial usability concerns. Well, I'm worried that, you know, personas of this type might really struggle with that. You know, those are great things to take note of. And get that cross-functional team feedback. Involve people from every area of the company that you can get your hands on. So you're going to be looking at screen flow diagrams, wireframes, maybe an early prototype or two. And then you move on a little bit further, you get it towards your first initial release, whatever that might be. You're finalizing that detailed design, solidifying your answers, you're hopefully solving all those initial issues that you need in order to get out the door. So analyze those little design details, analyze what that full impact of the product is going to be on your users. Still always identifying potential usability issues, never stop looking for these. Keep getting that cross-functional team feedback, and you're going to be looking at high-fidelity prototypes, beta systems, pilot systems, things like that. You know, so this may feel very waterfallish right now, but you're still going to go through these kinds of phases in an agile approach. You know, they're just going to be shorter, they're going to be focused on smaller things. This still holds up.
So, with everything that we're learning, we're getting a lot of information about how to do this and to be successful. But if it doesn't happen with good preparation and kickoff, things can fall apart quickly. And Kevin often I just love his stuff about kicking off meetings and meeting design. And this is really your chance to do that. This is really your chance to start thinking about it. Remember in the beginning of the presentation, we separated critique and feedback. And feedback is more of a gut reaction, and critique is this ongoing process. So a way to really think about that is when when you're about to have the first critique session, or before any of them, send out all your work. I'm huge, I love the idea of transparency in design. Show your work early, show it often, talk about it, talk about design. So get it out there so that when people come to the session, they're not seeing it for the first time. As designers, we can tend to sneak away and then, look what I made, and then we wonder why everyone's shooting holes in it, because they're having all these gut reactions, and instead, get the information out to them ahead of time. That way they can have some time to think it through and provide you some good information and feedback. And with that, remind them of what the goals are. And not so much about how you're going to achieve all of them, but what the goals are, so they can be keeping the goals in mind as they're formulating the information they're going to bring back to you. Present quickly. A lot of times we go in, like I said earlier, very defensive. So what we did is we built this, and the reason why we did is we did this. Be quick, be efficient. Like I said, you're great at what you do. Just go in there and do it, and show the design. The design will speak for itself. And on that, constraints. Don't defend your design. Don't say, well, we would have done this, but the platform didn't let, or we didn't have this budget. Constraints to stakeholders are excuses. So they're not going to understand it like we do. There's a time for that later. So some tools and techniques. Active listening. This is coming back to the communication. Thank you for that input. Just one more thing I'd like to wonder, when you said this, what exactly did you mean? Or gather, kind of pry in there, dig a little bit, unpack things as you're talking to them. Round robin. This is really helpful. Again, this whole formal critique is about structure. We're like setting up this model, this template, where people come in and just put their information in it, and then we can take it and go. And so by giving a round robin, you get a little structure, you, thank you, and it makes it a little bit easier. It makes it a little easier to gain information. Direct inquiry. I think this is really important, because like I said earlier, some people may not feel comfortable talking about technology and design. Some people may talk too much, and so some people aren't getting a chance. So if you see someone being quiet, hey, I noticed did you have thoughts on this? Especially if they're tied to the product somehow, or it's something that's going to affect them. And quotas. Again, structure. It helps you kind of train people how to get you the information that you need. So when you're in there, it's all right, we're going to look at this. I'd like to hear two things that you're thinking of great in the right direction. I'd like to hear one concern. And so you're kind of just like training them how to provide you the information. And you're not doubting them, you're not trying to belittle them, it's just like, hey, this is how we want to do this so we can be structured and efficient. And 6 thinking hats. This is something that Edward de Bono wrote about, and it just gives great context to how to look at things. Every hat's a different color, which represents a different way of thinking about the design that's on the wall or being reviewed, however you're reviewing it. It just kind of helps you contextualize, direct the information, and get it in a way that's a lot more usable. And then moderators. I particularly don't really support moderators, but if it's early on, you're trying to get things moving, then it might be good to have a moderator in there just to kind of keep everybody on track. But as you get more comfortable in the critique process, that's something that you should actually take over and steer.
So you're going to start doing these. Inevitably, you're going to run into difficult people. All right? We've dealt with them. Luckily, nothing's come to bodily harm at any point yet. But you're going to need tools to help you deal with these people. All right? So something we can do is we can make sure that we set all the expectations at the beginning of the session. What are we reviewing? Why are we reviewing it? What are the goals of today's critique? You can also make sure everybody understands critique. Those rules that I listed out earlier, post them in the room that you're doing the session. Review them with everybody. Make sure people understand. Make sure they really understand and aren't just nodding as you read through the rules. Direct inquiry again. Ask those quiet people for feedback. People will be quiet because they're not used to this kind of a session. They're shy. They don't think maybe their feedback is the most appropriate at that point in time. But don't be afraid to ask for it. Always use your personas, your goals, your principles. I hope all of you are creating these in your projects. These things are freaking phenomenal, all right? They can really help you keep a critique focused. When something starts to sound like it's coming out as personal opinion, personal preferences, you can go back and say, well, how does that affect our persona of Susie here? How does that help us or not help us meet our goal? How does that align with the design principle that we all agreed to when we kicked off this project? Right? So those things are awesome tools. And my personal favorite, laddering, the 5 whys. If anybody here has a small child or had a small child or maybe a small niece or nephew, you've experienced this. This is when you get a question, you answer that question, and you get the why. And then you answer that. And then you get the why. Then you answer that. And it keeps going until you run, hide, lock yourself in your bedroom, and hope to God that they turn 18 and move out really, really soon. Right? This works in a critique too. When things start sounding like personal preference, you can ask, well, why do you think that? And get them to answer. And then ask them why again. You're going to have one of two outcomes if you do that. You're going to either get them to drill down far enough that they realize that it is just their personal preference and that's not what they're there to be doing, so maybe they should just keep their mouth shut. Or you're going to drill down far enough that they're actually going to give you something that's useful.
So, follow-up is, as we kick off, like following up is the other bookend of these sessions that really help wrap them up and make them successful. Take note of how people interacted in the session. That will help you determine whether to keep them, what they responded to, what they didn't understand. Am I using the right language? Do I need to be more proactive in explaining some of the language we're using in the session? Document observations, any open questions that weren't answered maybe in that critique as things started happening in the course of a dialogue. You want to kind of document that so you can revisit it later, make sure that it's not one of those open-ended things so we get about 3/4 way through the product, we're like, oh, what about that? And then everything's derailed. So it's very proactive to do that. As you're talking to different people and the session is happening, kind of take note of what they're doing, what they're saying, and then follow up with them afterwards. Like, hey, I noticed you seem like maybe you wanted more out of this. Let's talk. Let's unpack that idea deeper. This is also a great spot. This is where you can really address constraints. So as you take the information back, you're deciding what to implement, you can then pull someone aside and say, hey, we want to do that, but we're having issues with our platform. It doesn't really allow us to do that this way. Is there another way that we can work towards achieving your same goal? And you kind of just start steering and getting towards that path of achievement. And then always just kind of keep them in the process. Like, all right, thank you, everybody, we're gone. No, it's like, hey, thank you, everyone was amazing, you gave us great feedback. I'm going to take this back, we're going to be working on it, we'll have something to show you at this time, we'll have another session where we're going to re-critique this, or we'll be critiquing the next thing in the product at this, and just keep the communication open, keep the dialogue moving, and keep everyone informed as to what's happening. They continue to feel a part. It really goes from this, you're this role, I'm this role, I'm this role, and it's us. We're building this product together. And as this product is successful, we're successful.
We're going to wrap up here. So, some of the things we want to make sure you take away. Critique's a life skill, not a design skill, and it's something that you really have to practice. So if this is something that you want to get better at, I encourage you to go out and start doing it right away. It's all about focusing on what works and what doesn't and why. All right, that why is a huge component, and that's really what separates this from that gut reaction that you have. All right. It's a form of analysis. Treat it like an analysis tool. Put it in your toolbox along with your user studies and your interviews and things like that. And intent is critical. If you're going out and asking for people to give you feedback, make sure that you really do want to listen and that it really is all about the product and it's not about that personal validation. If you're giving feedback, ask yourself, why am I saying this? Is it just because I want to be heard, or is it because I really want to help this person make it better?
Learning to critique, it improves your ability to communicate. And like we said, on the life skills side of this, we kind of get critiqued all the time. Like we have bosses and mentors and relationships and significant others, family members, and we're always living with these people, whether we're talking with them and exchanging information and helping each other. So not only does critique improve that, but it also helps us work better with our teams and our organizations. I work in a very large organization that is very convoluted because there's 3 design businesses within 4, and there's so many designers. Sometimes I don't work with the same people all the time. And so it really improves this ability for me to adapt and communicate with people more effectively. It can be done internally with clients. Like we said earlier, 3 to 6 people. You want to kind of keep this under containable. We don't want an outbreak. So 3 to 6 people in an hour. No one wants to review anything. For a meeting, no one wants to be 2 hours in these things. So keep it. And if you go longer, you get so much information. It's going to make it so much harder on you to see that information and make decisions about what's actionable. And then clearly communicate the goals, sessions, ground rules, this is what we're doing. It's not me. I'm not being the bossy designer. This is the plan of how we critique. And this applies to everyone, including myself. We're going to do this. Here's our goals ahead of time so that you can start to structure your feedback in light of those, and you just work through each of those things, and it helps keep critique moving, and it helps you, just like I said, it's like this template that you put out there to just get people to come and kind of stuff their information in so you can take it back and make it actionable quicker.
So we've given you a decent amount of information. But a lot of smarter and better looking people have also talked about this topic, so I would encourage you to go out and read some stuff. These slides will be posted, so you guys will have access to these links. But just, Google design critique, something like that. You'll find a lot of great stuff out there.
Thank you. Thank you for... Thank you for coming back in, even though, there was no fire, but you all came back in, and that's great, and I appreciate that. If we have time, we'll take as many questions. If we run out of time...
Do we have questions? Do we have time? Okay.
And if you do,
do you have the mic?
Here's the mic. If you don't get your question in, hunt us down, come talk to us, hit us on the Twitters and internet's find us. We'd love to talk about this, and we'd love to talk about it more with you.
Yeah, I'm curious. Okay, so you kind of asserted the everyone's equal in the room kind of thing. How do you enforce that?
Well, part of it is that you need to make sure that you're, if it's coming to a point where you feel like people are talking about design decisions, that you're trying to, you just quell that right at that point. Well, we're not here to solve the problem. I've gotten your feedback. I see where you're coming from. I'm going to take that. Make sure you're going to the lowly business analyst who's sitting next to the CEO, and you're treating him the exact same way. So a lot of it can be handled just by how you treat the people in the room. Okay, so and if afterwards you find out that CEO is actually expecting that I'm going to make that freaking change, well, you might just have to have a personal conversation with them. And I've done that. I've had to, even in the middle of a session, take someone, call a break, take them out of the room, and talk to them and be like, look, we agreed we were going to have this session. We agree that these are the rules, and the way you're behaving right now, it's not conducive.
So do you have like a little sort of social contract at the outset?
Yes.
Is that actually an artifact?
Yeah. If it's a client that I've never critiqued with before, I will make sure to go over everything before we even schedule a session. Here's what I want to do. I want to have a session. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what the rules are. Are you guys really feeling comfortable with that? If they say yes, great. If someone says no, if someone starts choking on that, no design decisions are going to be made or everybody's equal, well then I know that's, this is going to be a much more difficult design review type meeting, and that's just the way it has to be.
And
so
it really comes down to doing what you can with what you have. It may be the CEO or your boss. They just say, no matter what, I want this. And you just have to figure out what works. And like I said, it's always about removing yourself and saying, these are the rules for critique, and they apply to everyone. So it's not like, I'm telling you, Mr. Boss, that you can't be this. I'm just trying to make sure that we get the best information to improve the product. Thank you.
Hi, is there a place in a critique session for positive comments? I know it can be very intimidating to someone to sit and have lots of people say negative things about their design. I've had people give advice of the forum that you should always say something nice before you criticize.
It's about what's working and what's not working. So you really need to make sure that that's happening. And that's where the quotas can come in. I want two things that are really strong with this design. I want one thing that needs improvement. Or if you're not using quotas, if you're doing a little bit more freeform, you can just kind of guide that in your own facilitation of, okay, so what do you guys think is like working well? What are the things for this particular goal that we're doing that are really helping us get there? So you want to make sure you're having that balance.
You kind of lead. You kind of lead, and just like I said, it's like kind of like coaching people and talking and communicating in a way that you're kind of like helping them help you, and just kind of training them how to do this. And like that's perfect. To what do we like about this? And if someone starts saying, well, I don't like that. That's great. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback. Right now we're talking about something positive about this. And again, as a designer, it's the hardest thing to do to remove yourself from your work because you're attached to it. It's your baby. You've been working on it. You've sweat over it. You've bled over it. You're like, you've racked your brain to figure out these interactions and solutions sometimes. And it can be very hard. But the more you remove yourself, then sometimes the negative stuff doesn't bother you as much. That's why I say try to keep it to the product.
And one more thing I'll mention, because I saw Aaron use the words I like and I don't like. I saw a couple of people kind of get a little weird about that. So a lot of people get hung up on the I like and I don't like in critique. There's an idea that you can't say that in critique. And if you tell your participants that they're not allowed to say I like or I don't like, well, that's just part of how they speak. They're going to say it anyway, and if you told them they're not allowed to, then they're going to be like, oh shit, I should have said that, I'm sorry. and then their flow is disrupted. They're not going to finish their thought. So just make sure that if what they follow I like with sounds like a personal preference, you then drill into that with asking why or something like that to really make sure you get that qualified feedback from it.
Yeah, it's like the rules are a guide. It's kind of just like herding cats this way, and then over here, this way. It's not so much like you can't do this, you can't do that, because a lot of the people we're going to be critiquing aren't used to this. They're not designers. They're a business analyst or someone else. They all have valuable points of touch on the product, but they're not used to speaking that way with designers and developers. So it's really kind of about coaching them along and just finding the way to get the most information out of them.
So I think we're about out of
We
time.
have two, right? Thank you guys so much.